So I'm in the Georges River. Well, I'm just up from the Georges River, the upper parts of the Georges River. It's at the back of Campbelltown in a suburb called Kentlyn. If you drive to the end of the Georges River Road, you'll find this bush track. And I've just decided to come through and have a look at some of the plants in here that you could grow in your own garden. All of this land is sandstone or sandy soil. It's not high quality soil, but I find a lot of Sydney's most beautiful plants grow in some of the most rubbishy soils. So I'm just going to go down. There's a small ravine here. If you get down to the bottom, you'll see the upper parts of the Georges River. The Georges River flows into... Now, which way to go? I think it's this way. The Georges River flows into the Botany Bay, but here it's a beautiful, just like a little stream. But what I'll do is I'll pause the video and come back when I find some interesting things that we can grow in our gardens. Here we have a baby grass tree. You all know the grass trees that get the big black trunks. Well, this one is obviously brand new. And look at the flower spike. It's not quite, it's just starting to open up now. I'll just bring it down to have a look. Not open yet, but it's about to. But these things are incredibly slow growing. They take decades to get a trunk. So if you plant one like this, you just have like a nice grassy feature, and the flower spikes once a year. You'll have to go to a specialist native plant nursery to get one of these, but it's an interesting addition to your garden. This plant is just about, the flowers are just about to open. It's absolutely, you can see how beautiful they're going to be. I'm pretty sure this is a crowia. Probably not one of the easiest plants to grow. There you go, there's one that's open now. Very pretty though. This one is Grevillea sericea. Gets white or pink flowers. And if you grow it at home, it'll grow into a thick, dense shrub, about 1.5 meters tall. Again, you'll need to probably get this from a specialist plant, a native plant nursery. Though actually, I did see one in my local garden centre recently. And now this one down here, this has thrown me for a loop. This is obviously a little Grevillea, but I don't know what it is. I've not seen this one before. It's got deep red flowers. It's growing right next to sericea, but I'm quite certain it's not the same species, even though the flowers are similar. I think this is a different species. And also up here, these are Banksia spinulosus, I think. But the flowers are finished. Well, here we go, we've got one up here. Is it spinulosa or ericafolia? I'm not sure. These are really easy to grow, even in clay. There's a lot of wattles in the bush. Wherever you go in Australia, there's always wattles. And this is a giveaway. This obviously flowered a couple of months ago, and look at the seed pods. That is a classic looking wattle seed pod. So that's a wattle there, and actually this is a different species altogether. But you can see it's got the same, even though they're tiny, it's got the same kind of seed pods, just on a much smaller version. They look like peas in a pod. Not sure what species of wattle this one is, but it's quite a pretty one, that one. I'm not sure of the botanical name for this plant, but I'm pretty sure it's commonly called a mountain devil. It gets these pretty little flowers, and the seed pods, they look like a little devil's head with thorns on it. Have a look. This plant is deceptively spiky. I'm just going to pull that seed head off. You can see. Hang on. Can you focus on that? It's got a look like a devil's head with thorns. Apparently, that's what they say it looks like. It only grows in sandy soils, and you'll find it all the way up into the Blue Mountains. But I've never seen people growing it in their gardens. But it doesn't look spiky, but it's actually quite sharp. Here's that little maroon grevillea again. This looks like a ground cover. I've never noticed this before here. I've been walking around this part of the country for years, but never noticed. Oh, and this, I almost missed this, isopoggans. These are really interesting little plants. And the seed, they're often called drumsticks because see seed pods that finish. That's be a really interesting plant for your garden. Again, one from a native plant nursery. Also, what was I going to show you? That's right. There's so much to show. Scribbly gums. The beautiful grey bark on this tree, very light grey, and this one is covered in these scribbles. Now the bad news is if you live outside of Australia, you don't get the scribbles because it's an insect that does these markings. See if I can get a better shot. This tree is great for a suburban garden because look, it's not very big. It's no bigger than 10 metres. Eucalyptus hemistoma, one of my favourite gum trees. This one has got a massive numbers of scribbles on it. And there's actually 5 species called scribbly gum. Hang on. But this species, I'm pretty sure, is hemistoma, and it's well known for growing into weird shapes like this one. See how this one's sort of growing sideways and all crooked? There are other species you can get which are more upright if you want a really upright one. And here's a much prettier example of isopoggans. Really pretty. With the interesting drumstick features too. Now this plant, you have to have an open mind with me on this plant. This is a gum tree, Angophora hispida, and look how it's. Can you see how this is it here? It's growing sideways. This Angophora hispida will only grow to about 5 metres max, and it often grows itself into the most twisted, gnarly, crooked shapes you can imagine. As it is here, it's growing sideways. Gets massive white flowers. Now, if you had this in your garden, I can tell you it will absolutely grow a lot better than this. But you can also, prune off the dead branches, and you've got this amazingly, incredibly rustic feature. This bark is, it's rustic but beautiful, and it's one of those things that really adds character to your garden. I've got one of these in my home garden, but I've only just recently planted it, so it's not really worth showing you yet. But yeah, Angophora hispida. Gum trees are not all called eucalypts anymore. They've been split up into 3 genuses. There's Angophora, Corymbia, and Eucalyptus now. Angophora costata. This is only about half grown. This is a massive tree, and like the closely related to the Angophora hispida, but this one is huge. This is Angophora costata, and it gets this really distinctive pink bark, reddish to pink bark. And at certain times of the year, it goes deeper and deeper pink throughout the year, and then sheds its bark and it goes light pink. But again, it grows into the most gnarly, twisted, rugged forms, but for your average suburban garden, it's too big. So here is Angophora hispida again. Remember I showed you one a bit before. This is it here, look. This twisted trunk. Up, it's probably about 5 meters tall. A really gnarly, twisted, crooked shape could be a fascinating feature in your garden. And there's your isopogons again, drumstick flowers. Now here we have a stand of Banksia serrata. Now the flowers are all dead at the moment, unfortunately, but there's quite a few of them in this little spot. But what I'm going to do is get down and show you the trunk of this tree, because the bark is a really interesting feature. Hang on. Not sure if you can see it. Got really corky like cork-like bark. It really gets some good light on it. There you go. And then here's another one. The flowers are pretty when they're fresh, but they're not so pretty when they're dead. But the leaves have got these serrations on them, which is why it's called Banksia serrata. It's not sharp, despite the name of serrations. What else have we got here? This is a wattle, I'm not sure which one. There's another Banksia serrata here. It really is one of Sydney's most sort of iconic plants, Banksia serrata. It's, you know, Bill and, what was it? Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, the characters out of that, one of them was based on the old man Banksia. The gnarly, twisty, cranky old tree, this one. So I'm currently at the top of the hill and I'm about to walk down here. I don't know if you can see, it's hard to see in the video, but there is the river at the bottom. That's where I'm headed. It's the isopogons again. A lot of isopogons out this year. I was hoping I might find some flannel flowers, but I might be a bit late. I think it's currently late September. I think I should have been out earlier for the flannel flowers and the waratahs. More crowias there, and yeah, Spinulosa, I think that one. Seems to be a lot of variation with that Spinulosa. A lot of my knowledge is just from reading books and being a keen observer and being a gardener for many years. So if I've made any mistakes here, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm pretty confident about most of the stuff I'm telling you. And here you have a nice example of a young Banksia serrata. It's sort of a bit more handsome, not so gnarly and twisty as the old one. And if you have it in your home garden, you can keep it neater by keeping it pruned, of course. They don't have to be really woody. You can cut off the dead bits and make them neater. Oh. There's the crow ears again. The video just doesn't capture how pretty they are. And this one, I have no idea what they are actually. A nice cut in the rock here to get down. It's a pretty easy walk, and at the bottom there's a really beautiful swimming hole, but water's probably still pretty cold at this time of year. So I'm about to do the descent into the ravine. It's not that steep, but certainly not wheelchair accessible. You find the plants start to change as you get into the ravine, different species. I'm going to have to turn the camera off to get down here. You can see there's a beautiful swimming hole down there. It's really hard to pick up on the camera. Okay, I found the track again. I got off the track somehow for a bit, but I'm back on again. These, I believe, are epacras, I think they are. Where are they? They are pretty tubular, kind of heath-like plant, growing in shallow sandy soil. Can you hear that squealing sound? That's black cockatoos in the distance somewhere. And we have a stand here of Guymere lilies, Dorianthus. And you can see these have just finished flowering. That's a dead flower hanging off the side. I love to take inspiration from the bush for my garden. The way that plants grow in the nooks of rocks is a little piece of inspiration to take home. See this Banksia serrata, which arches over the footpath. Again, that's something I would take home, like that idea, planted over archer footpaths in the garden. How pretty. Oh, I have to go off track for this one. I'll show you this one. Hang on. Shit. Hang on. I think the first plant I showed you on the video was a grass tree or xanthoria, and here's one with a big trunk. It's probably, I don't know, they say that they only grow 5 centimetres a year. I don't know if that's true, but this one would, at that rate, this would have to be a couple 100 years old, this plant. And this one here, it's got a fork. Can you see that? It's got it's got 2 trunks basically. It goes up and then forks, so you've got a couple of heads. But I'd recommend getting one that's grown from seed rather than pulling one out of the bush. I didn't see any waratahs along the way. I don't know what either of those plants are. And I'm almost at the bottom. The water is pretty clean this far up the river, and it's a really beautiful swimming hole in summer. So I wanted to point out a plant not to grow in your home garden, and that's this one, Lomandra longifolia. You see here it's doing a great job at stabilising this riverbank. So I call it a practical plant. They can get quite ugly and huge in a home garden. However, plant breeders have done miracles with that plant, and if you buy one of the cultivars like Lomandra tannica or Lomandra verde, they're much more, let's use the word dainty, for a much more refined, more dainty, prettier, smaller plant than this. So use this in bush regeneration, but not in your home garden. And there's also a tree here which I want to show you growing in the wild, which is commonly grown as a street tree. I hope I'm getting the name right now. Tristania laurenopsis, or is it I'm annoyed now, I can't think. It's actually let me think. Yeah, I think it's Tristania laurenopsis. Anyway, it's commonly called a water gum. It's not a gum tree, which is annoying that they would give it that name, but it's not a gum tree. But you can see here it's practically growing in the water, hence its name, water gum. I just thought I'd show you what it looks like in the wild, because it is a common street tree, and I'll just show you another more advanced one. again growing really close to the water. This whole area floods every time it rains, goes underwater. Actually, I think this is it here again. It's either Tristania or Tristaniopsis lorina. Tristaniopsis lorina, I think that might be it. And here is one that's pretty much fully grown. It's probably 5 or 6 meters. Hang on. It is drought hardy, but if you grow it in a wet area, it grows better. It gets yellow flowers. And these, I think these are Acacia longifolia. I think Sydney golden models. That's a weed, that's a ringing, there's a daisy. Popular little spot for people to come down and camp overnight and make a little fire, which you should not do in the bushfire season, but look at this amazing little fern growing. I have no idea what that is. Would love to find out for my garden. Takes a lifetime to learn all these plant names. Oh look, there's a whole big bunch of it here. It's really pretty, this fern. Here it is again. I really quite like that. It's got the new growth. It's got black stems, which makes it quite striking. But this here is the top of that water gum that I was showing you before. And the Sydney golden wattle. Just going to point out 2 grevilleas here. Not very spectacular, these ones. Small flowers, but there's this other one here. Where is it? Actually, that's not a grevillea, that one. I don't know what this plant is with the pea-shaped flowers. Quite common in the bush here. I don't know what it is, but huge red gum here. It's Angophora costata with all the gnarly twisted branches. So I found some waratahs, but they're not flowering. If you see a waratah in the bush, please don't pick the flowers, because you stop them from reproducing if you pick the flowers off. And they're not very common, because of people's first reaction is to pick the flowers, of course, because they're so beautiful. But really, just take a photo. Sorry if I start huffing and puffing a bit. It's a bit of a steep walk out. Another grass tree. Now, this is an interesting little plant. I've never noticed this before. I wonder if that's an orchid. It's got really sticky flowers. Oh, I had to show you this plant here. This vine growing in sandy soil in the bush. Believe it or not, that's Hardenbergia violacea, the very common garden plant. If you grow it in your garden, it's much thicker and lush and full of flowers. Here it's just a twining vine in the sandy soil. You put it in your home garden and it really becomes thick and dense. Here there's two really common garden plants. This one right here is Acacia fimbriata, one of the most beautiful wattles for Sydney and surrounding areas. Actually, this one goes all the way up the coast, east coast of Australia, up and down. But it is one of the most beautiful ones, fimbriata. And behind it is, can't remember the botanical name for that plant, but it is the New South Wales Christmas bush. So it's September now. Very soon it will get flowers, and then in December, I think it's the sepals of the flowers turn really bright, or a deep burnt orangey red, and that's commonly sold in florists at Christmas time as New South Wales Christmas bush. It's growing on sandy soils, and if you want to grow it in your home garden, it's a bit temperamental. So you can't grow it in hard solid clay. You can grow it in sand, or if you've got clay that's reasonable and well, you've done some soil improvement, then you could still grow this small tree. It's long lived, and if you can get it to grow, everyone will love it at Christmas time. It's always a brilliant feature at Christmas, and everyone will ask you for flowers. But actually they're not flowers, as I said, I think it's the sepal of the flower. Again, this is the New South Wales Christmas bush, and I just want to zoom in. You can see it's got flower buds. So from memory, I think the flowers are white, and it's the sepals that go red. But you can see it's a fairly open bush or tree. When you grow it in your home garden where it's got, good access to water and nutrients, it will grow into a much thicker shrub. It's a bit of a fussy one. You need to give it good conditions and it will grow, but you can't put it in hard solid clay, it won't grow. But if you put it in good deep soil, it will grow much better than it's growing here in the pure sand. This soil here is really rocky, sandy, shallow soil. Next is more Christmas bush here. Remember I said about using the bush as inspiration? Like a winding track like this, for me that's inspiration for your own garden. There's something about a winding track which leads your eye to somewhere and makes you want to go further in. Though I wouldn't recommend putting your track to the edge of a cliff like this, but still, you get the idea. I would love to know what this plant is, if anyone knows. It's not a wattle, even though the leaves resemble a wattle leaf. It gets yellow flowers from memory, but these big, thick, flat stems are a really interesting feature, and I think it's maybe a G-bung. But I wouldn't mind growing it in my garden, but I don't know what it is, so I have to find out what this plant is, if anybody knows. The trunk often goes black when it gets older, I think maybe from old bushfires, but the black bark remains, so often the bark is black, and then you get this bright green foliage, which is a really fascinating contrast. I want to just point out this tree. I'm not sure if this is a tea tree or what it is. It smells like a tea tree, so it could be a leptospermum, maybe a melaleuca. But you can see how twisted, gnarly and cranky looking this plant is. Hang on. It's hard to capture on film. You see how it's really open, and then like this feature here, how it's got nothing on the branches and then foliage at the end. I tell you, if the Japanese had settled this country, they would have done amazing things with plants like this. Turn them into like giant bonsais. Sculpt them, prune them, trim them. An amazing feature. The Japanese really revere old, gnarly, cranky old features. They value age in a garden, which is not really, it's not really a concept in Western gardens, but there's beauty in cranky old rugged foliage. What you do is you just cut off these dead ones, right? Cut off those, clean it, and then just tip prune the ends of these to help bush it up just a little bit at the ends, and you would end up with kind of like cloud pruning. Open branches and then small puffs of foliage, and you have to look at it a different way. You turn something ugly and you make it an amazing, beautiful feature. Here's another one of those trees. You can see again, it's hard to capture in this light, how it's mostly wood and then foliage at the ends, growing sideways and higgledy-piggledy shape. You can do something marvellous with that and turn it into an amazing feature. Here's another idea for using the bush as inspiration. You've got a footpath or a track and a plant growing in the middle of it. That's a great idea for your garden. A footpath with a plant smack in the middle, and an old gnarly one like this too. Beautiful. Here's that plant again that I thought was maybe a G-bung. See the black trunk, then the green foliage. This one's not so healthy, it's got a lot of marks on the leaves, but yeah, if anyone knows what that is, I would be interested to know. Whenever I come into the bush, I'm always fascinated with plants that, oh look, I could grow that in my garden, how beautiful would that be? And here's one that's, look at this, it looks like mondo grass. I've never noticed this before. It's obviously not mondo grass, but it's something just similar to mondo grass. Pretty little plant, I wonder what kind of flowers it gets. There's so much potential in the bush for your garden. Okay, well, I'm just about finished now. I'm back up at the top of the hill and walking back to my car. Thank you for joining me on this little bushwalk. is Angophora hispida again, commonly called Argyle apple. I know you think I'm probably crazy for trying to convince you to grow this ugly tree, but I find it's fascinating. It's an interesting tree. And it's small enough for any suburban garden. Oh look, this is a better one to show you. This is 2 trees here. This is one growing up like this and around. You see it's growing like a pretzel. This other one's another tree here. I think there's 2 trees, yep. This one growing sideways. Yep. Fascinating. These pea flowers, I don't know what they are. They're very common tree. Always pick a little bit of the foliage and sniff it. Helps to identify it by the smell of it. Often helps identify the plant. Here we go. Little Banksia spinulosa. Pretty, so pretty. I think that's a hakea. I'm not sure about that. Spiky. Where is it? Get the camera to focus on these pods. Oh, good, spiky. That was an open one where the seed pops out. Foliage like this is always a giveaway. It's a wattle. That's a burgundy grevillea again, which I've never seen before, but now it's everywhere. There are koalas in this bushland, but I'm always looking out for the flowers and plants and shrubs that I never actually notice them. You have to have a good eye to spot them. They're so well camouflaged. Interesting colours in this gum tree. I'm on my way back, and I'm somewhere since maybe this is the first plant I showed you, I think, and someone's cut it in half. I mean, what the fuck, people? What the fuck? Luckily, they're not rare, but come on, people. You notice that on the top of the hill here, the trees are smaller, it's less lush. The soil is thinner, doesn't get as much water because it's on top of a hill. Same thing applies in your garden at home. If you live on top of a hill, you've probably got thinner soil and less water than someone who lives at the bottom of the hill. It's all stuff to take into account when you're gardening, about what plants you choose and how much you water. Oh, I have to show you this one. Last one that I'll show you. This is a very common suburban tree, blueberry ash. This one's about 6 or 7 metres tall. Gets white flowers followed by blue berries. If you grow it in good soil and give it plenty of water, it'll be a lot more lush than this. I actually have already got a video featuring blueberry ash. And you'll see it's heaps more lush than this one because it's in a garden where it's getting water and fertiliser. That blueberry ash is Iliocarpus reticulatus. There you got some more meanders. Another blueberry ash. As I said, don't recommend these for your home garden. Buy one of the cultivars like Tanica Verde, or I think there's actually quite a few different cultivars now. But the straight standard Lamandra, not that pretty for your home garden.